Thank you, Isabel, and thank you, Bernard. This is called Celestial Intercession. My mother died this year on my birthday while I was in rehab at the Betty Ford Center. Although I had been in therapy for 2 years preparing for this day and sorting out what was a deeply painful relationship, nothing can quite prepare you for when you pick up the phone and are told your mother is dead. On the day that my mother passed, my roommate, Aaron, gave me some tremendously important chocolate from Madagascar. And this is a treat you do not eat lightly or unconsciously. It was deep, dark, and earthy, with a light dusting of African sea salt, and it won Best in Show at the Paris Confectionery Convention. That night, in my bedroom, I unspooled the red thread which sealed the special package, and I pulled out this serious and dense bar, and I imagined that I was talking to my mother, who had died earlier that day, and offered up to her some of this marvelous treat, as Emmy always did love fine chocolates. At once, I felt an invasion of pure knowledge, a wall of truth that pressed itself into my frontal lobe and gave me a certainty that I was in fact communicating with my mother's alive and well spirit, as if there might exist a 2 or 3 day window starting immediately following one's passing, which permits the transiting person to intercede with persons and events back on Earth. As I prepared for sleep, I imagined that my mother would consume that night an additional quarter of that chocolate bar, or 4 individual squares, which I ceremoniously placed on a platter in the center of my desk, in the hope that she would revisit Earth during the night and eat more of it. I ate the other 3/4 of this bar, which is a whole lot of serious chocolate to eat all at once. Hours later, as I slumbered deeply, I had the very certain experience of great celestial arms reaching down from heaven and penetrating through slits in my shoulders, breaching my body and performing a kind of spiritual chiropractic to the therapeutic advantage of my corporeal body, controlling and kneading my thickest limbs, as if to say, "We're gonna straighten you out now, David, once and for all. I'm doing this at your mother's request." There accompanied these machinations loud and grinding sounds. Well, after all, my mother's last words to me were, "Get stable, David, get stable." Apparently, I was screaming at high volume in my sleep during this spiritual realignment of my core and was woken up by my good friend Aaron. I sat up in bed and contemplated my experience. I didn't think it. I didn't dream it. I didn't postulate it. I didn't pretend it. I didn't project it. I didn't invent it. I knew it. I knew it was true. I knew it was real. I knew that whether other people would believe me or not was completely immaterial to the subject of my experience. It was what it was, what it was, what it was. And I believe it. I finally went back to sleep, and the divine intercession started up once again. This time I felt better because I kind of knew what to expect. Still, as the strong and massive hands entered my body a second time and commenced to squeeze my muscles and bones, I felt sure that this was a good thing, that people and angels do give a shit whether I succeeded or not, and cared that I didn't relapse my old Jekyll and Hyde ways. On this second occasion, interestingly, this heavenly masseur and celestial chiropractor goes for the smaller parts of my limbs, my wrists, my ankles, my elbows, and great pressures are exerted and grand noises are heard as the being from the other side pressed his fingers deeply and expertly into my bones and made me feel yet more connected to the original best idea of who and what I am. This time, I wake up in a cold sweat and I stay awake for an hour, kind of hoping it doesn't happen a third time, but kind of hoping it does too. I fall back asleep now about 5 a.m. and yet again, a third time, this angel under contract from my mother massages my fingers and toes and the top of my scalp. He is working this realignment from top to bottom. I feel a certain knowledge. This is a direct communication with my mother's spirit, and this is the last communication I would have with her before she passed into the heart of the sun. So, your typical Berkeley-educated, cynical, secular, humanist atheist, have never in my lifetime employed words like heaven. And yet, here I found myself for the first time feeling an uncanny connection to that concept and word. What was particularly noteworthy was this idea of a transit mode in which worthy people who leave their bodies are afforded a brief intertemporal space and awareness wherein they can make whatever positive final changes they would wish to see in the world they leave behind. I suddenly knew that the word death should carry quotation marks, as it has always been and will always remain the ultimate mystery of humankind. People don't die, they transit. After these gobsmacking experiences, I found it much easier and more comfortable to let go and say goodbye to my dear departed mom in a way which left me feeling at ease with her spirit and memory. Although she had inflicted great psychic pain and abuse upon me during her lifetime, I no longer felt the energy to keep such negative thoughts aloft and alive. These resentments drained from my body and were replaced with a lasting wave of love only. This, to me, was tantamount to discovering a new personal maturity and a new phase in my life's arc. When I awoke, first thing I did was to count the remaining squares of chocolate that I had left on my desktop for my mom before going to bed. I was astonished, but not surprised, to find that just 3 of the 4 squares remained on the plate. Wait, did I count that right?